Justice Teresia Madheka of the High Court is with us this morning. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
It's good to have you in the studio.
At long
I'm
last.
happy to be here too.
We've spoken to you on the phone,
Yes.
on video link,
Yes.
and finally here you are
Finally, here I am in Nairobi.
in glorious Technicolor.
4D.
Yes, 4K.
Yes.
That's what it's called.
Yes. Have you ever heard that word, kumumumia?
No, I've heard it today. Kumumumia. I know kumumunya. Lakini kumumumia nimesikia kwa mara ya kwanza leo.
Huyu mjamaa huyu anataka
Tatafuta
kumumumia.
Kiswahili.
Yes. Okay. Let us see if anybody knows the word that City Muga is talking about. Let us know and let us know its meaning. He says it's to crash. What did you say? To drip on the chin.
Eric, why don't we continue with the topic of the day?
Okay. It's Thursday, so it's Justice Thursday. And every Thursday for the last couple of weeks, we've decided let's open up the conversation about accessing to justice. And access to justice is not just for people who go to court seeking justice. It's also for people who have been taken to court or who find themselves in court or people who work in the system as well. The entire chain of justice. And Justice Teresia Madheka is a judge of the High Court and the chairperson of a special task force on children rights and children matters of the Administration of Justice, a National Council for the Administration of Justice. Justice Madheka, it's good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Whenever we've spoken with you, it's been about children matters.
Yes.
So you've got great passion for children matters.
Yeah, I think that's my
Is
calling.
this where you is it just because you found yourself in the children's court, or was it even before you joined the judiciary?
I think I've spent most of my life in the judiciary, working life. But I think growing up, I hear it from my age mates when we were growing up that there was something just about me and issues of justice. I don't know what that means because they'll tell me, I remember. And one of them was even telling me, you remember those days we used to watch Vihoja Mahakamani? Yeah? There was something, I think there's something you used to say there. I can't remember. But I have some of my age mates who tell me that. And I don't know. I just think that having joined the judiciary and getting, the first few cases on children matters, and especially one that stuck with me when I worked in Kakamega, a place called Butali.
Yes.
Yes, I worked in Butali as a DM2 professional. Those days we were called DM2
District
professionals.
magistrate.
Yes. And I always recall the case of a young 8-year-old boy who was charged with arson. And what happened is that he had been left at home, or had come from school and found nobody, and was trying to either warm his food or something. And you know how we plant sugarcane in Western?
I do very well.
Sometimes we plant it up to the
doorstep.
up to the doorstep. So somehow the fire just started there and caught their plantation. And if it starts in one, it can burn the
Spreads to
whole
neighboring.
location.
And sugar cane, my friend, is inflammable to a degree that you need to see to understand.
Yeah, it really, there was a big fire. And now, of course, everyone was like, who started, who saw? Of course, the kid was there, and he was brought to my court. And how high the...
It's an 8-year-old.
Yes. At 8, our law is that at 8 years you can be charged.
Wow.
The age of criminal liability in our current penal code is 8 years. So the boy, I couldn't even see him.
I mean, you were standing at the dock.
You can't see him because he's so small, you can't see him.
Right.
So I'm like, you people, you are not serious. But there's a charge, arson, and you know how many complainants?
All the neighbors
Yes.
whose cane had been...
And that struck that there's something really wrong with our system. Luckily, there was an advocate in court. I think now he's... what was his name? He's Shitsama. I think he was once... Recently, in the last few years, he was, I think... do you call them high commissioners or ambassadors to Ethiopia? But now he's back in the country. He happened to be in my court and is the one I asked to, can you do something about this case? And I think since then I was like,
It took a passion.
something needs to be done. And somehow around the same time, we passed our Children's Act, the current one. And when it came into force in 2002, I was among the first magistrates to be appointed as a children magistrate. So I think somehow the universe was...
Stars aligned.
So I ended up there, and I haven't looked back.
It's interesting that you give us that example of
Yeah.
something that you saw.
Yes.
And it made you feel that there's something wrong with our system.
Yeah.
What was wrong with the system then? Has it improved now?
Well, a lot of things have happened. We got the Children's Act, which has a Bill of Rights for children. Before we even got our constitution, by the way, the Children's Act has a whole Bill of Rights for children. And systems. It came up with systems. It demarcated duties. It had very nice things, legal aid, social, psychosocial support, child-friendly courts, separate cells for children. Those things were there. They are still there. But the problem was in the implementation. Because then, children did not have legal aid. Today we have the law, but we still don't have sufficient capacity to give children legal aid, so that every child who comes to court, though there is a right to legal aid, can actually have an advocate representing them. Because imagine yourself at 8 years. Even now, you will go to
Standing
court.
before-
You will be saying, I want to speak to my lawyer.
Yes.
It is important.
Separate cells for children. A child is arrested, they will still, like those days it was really bad, they still end up in the same cells with the adults who've committed crimes. So imagine yourself at 8 years or 10 years or 12 years or 15 or 17, and you're in the cells with adults.
Some repeat offenders.
Those guys who, yes. That has not changed really much. We have it in the law, but we still have children ending up in some
But
of
what is the challenge then? I mean, it's in,
It
the
is
law
in the
says let's do this.
implementation of that law.
Who's to implement?
We are not providing, in my, the way even the task force found out when the task force went to the ground, that sufficient money, let me just say it like that, money is not put in the systems for, in the child justice system. So that you find if it's infrastructure, for example, let me give you just an example.
Yeah.
You need a separate cell to hold children. Now we call them child protection units. They're supposed to be next to the police station or within the police station, where if a child is arrested, will find themselves there, can be held there. But if that is not constructed, it's not given personnel, the personnel are not trained, everything required for that is not there, then how will that happen? So along the chain, because it's a whole chain, sufficient money is not placed aside.
So it requires some financial investment.
Exactly.
It requires resourcing and training
Yes.
and capacity building and all these things.
All that.
Now, all those things, when the law was being drafted, when it was going through the stages of Parliament,
Yes.
by the time the president assented to it,
Yes.
the people in the justice sector knew about them.
Okay, one of the things
They knew what was
what
needed.
would be needed. Yes, I think one of the things you'll find about the current law, Children's Act, is that it took so many years for it to be enacted. There was the history about it. There was some kind of resistance. I cannot say what it was, but it took quite a long time for that law to be passed. And the policy, you see, for a law to be passed, you need a policy first. But the
Okay.
policy came
After the law.
afterwards. The act was passed in 2001, came into force in 2002. The policy came into force in 2010.
8 years later.
Yes. So that means there was actually a struggle in how to implement that law. The current bill that is pending before Parliament, actually, the task force has been the co-chair of the National Steering Committee on pushing for this bill to be implemented. And you can see that all these things have been done. And one of the things that is different with the old law is that now there has been costing. How much will it cost us to implement this law? So every agency was called upon to come up with a kind of budget. How much will it cost you to implement this law? So you find the judiciary put in its costing, the Department of Children's Services, the police, everyone along the chain has been asked to do that because there are specific things that the law requires each of these agencies to do. So that might make a big difference in terms of
But
how,
does it mandate,
when it is passed.
Does it mandate the
Yes.
government, the National Treasury, to allocate this particular amount of money that is required to implement it? Because it could also be there. Oh, this law will cost this much to implement, but then the same thing happens.
No, the beauty about
Hakuna pesa.
this now is that itaenda bunge, and every person who sits in that parliament or will debate that law understands what it means to be a child in the justice system because they make the laws. And therefore, it is expected that they will understand that when you make a law for children, then you must also make the provision for how that law will be implemented because at the end of the day, they must be handled from this law that you're making. You're making it for a reason to meet certain needs of this child. And therefore, at the end of the day, if you make it and you don't make provision for its implementation, then it becomes, you end up making laws or creating paper rights for children.
Justice, aside from the bostels, the institutions where supposedly young offenders are sent, do we have any institution in this country that actually caters for juvenile offenders, a system other than the bostel?
Okay, the child justice system has several institutions, different institutions.
Yes.
And all the institutions, it starts from the police cell, actually. The moment a child is arrested, that is a child. The moment the child gets into that. The moment we finish with the child, and even before we finish with this child, when they are going through the trial, there is a remand home. Children stay in remand, just like adults go to their remand homes.
Is it specific for children?
Yes, there are remand homes for children.
All over the country?
No, there are like 5 in the country. I think 5. They are not.
Okay.
They are not enough. Like in Nakuru, for example, we have one that serves Nakuru, Naivasha, Eldama Ravine, Molo, and Nyahururu. So you can imagine children and Narok. So we have one that serves. I can speak. They come from all those courts.
Essentially, it serves the Rift Valley.
So the children are brought there. There is one in Kericho. So for these courts there, they come here. Then when we finish with the child, when the court has had the case and determined that, at the end of the case, what kind of order do I wish to make? If I wish to have this child go into an institution, we have what they call rehabilitation schools. Those ones are for children between the age of 11 or between 10 and 15. So between 10 and 15, you go to a rehabilitation school.
And how many of those do we have?
There are quite a number. There are quite a number.
Regionally, I mean, just anecdotally speaking, regionally, how many would we have? Let's say at the coast.
Coast, there's Likoni. There's one in Kabete. There is Wamumu. There are not many. There are not many because you can find you in Nakuru and you'll go to Likoni. Or Wamumu or Kabete.
Depending on capacity, whether it's full.
No, not really, but because what happens that the court does not directly send you to the rehab school. It sends you to an institution where they call it.
Is it a correctional institution?
No, not where they determine your needs, or the risks, whether you are high risk, whether you are processed, whether you are high risk or low risk. It's called Getaduru. So they send you there, and they are the ones who assess now and determine if you go to a high risk rehab school or a low risk rehab schools. The Department of Children's Services runs those ones. Now, if you are between the age of 16 and 18, then you can be taken to a Boston institution. So that is the difference. And in Boston, for the rehab and Boston, you go for 3 years, a maximum of 3 years. So in those institutions, they are supposed to have programs for you for rehabilitation. There's another one at Kamiti, the only one in the country, the correctional facility at Kamiti for youths between 17 and 21. This one, it's for 4 months only. They used to say it is supposed to administer short, sharp shock. Can you say that? Short,
yes.
Sharp. Are you able to say short, sharp shock?
I can say it very easily, but you've said it so well.
Let's take a break, Judge.
Yeah.
When we come back, you'll tell us about this.
Yes.
Because I think it's interesting for everybody to understand this whole, when a
The whole
child
process.
enters the system,
Yes.
how do they go through the system?
Yes.
With us in the studio this morning is Justice Teresia Madheka. She is a judge of the High Court, a chairperson of a special task force on children matters in the National Council for Administration of Justice. We are talking about a justice system that is fit for children.
Yeah.
Today is Thursday, so it's Justice Thursdays, and that's why we're having this conversation like we've been having them. In the room with you this morning is Eric Latif and C.T. Muga. Our guest today, #Justice Thursday, is Justice Teresia Madheka, Judge of the High Court and Chairperson of a Special Task Force on Children's Rights. We're talking about a justice system that's fit for children. Before we took the break, Judge, you are taking us through the system. When a child enters the system, and we call it the system, we all
Yes.
know what it means.
Yes.
Excuse me. So it starts from the cell, and then you told us from there they're taken to a child remand. When they come to court, you take them to a child remand, and then depending on their age, they go either to a rehab school or to the Boston institution. But there's a processing house that you told us about. You mentioned. Just tell us a bit about it. You said Getaduru.
The reception centers.
Yes.
Yes, actually, what happens is, first of all, the system. I think it's good for us to understand what their system is.
Yes.
So it doesn't just start it starts from the community. The child justice system begins from the community, because that's where the child, for them to
Resides.
commit an offense, for example, something must have gone wrong. For a child to steal your phone or mug you or something like that, there is something wrong somewhere. Someone has let go, So it starts there. Then they end up either at the police station, where they'll be taken through a process. The police have rules. There's child offender rules in the Children's Act on what they should do. For example, just call the children officer if you can't find a parent, or get an advocate. Put them in a separate cell from the adults. After you draw up a charge sheet, if the child is a child in conflict with the law.
And this is somebody who's below 18.
Yes, below 18. Anyone below the age of 18.
Doesn't matter how tall they are.
It's not your height or your size. It is your age. Katiba imesema.
Yes.
Yes. Below 18. It could be 17 years up to, I don't know, the last day, you are still below 18, because that's what it says. So that one. You come from the court, they bring you from the cells, they bring you from police station to court. They have a charge sheet if you're a child offender. If you are lost, for example, or you are apprehended for any other reason, like sometimes you are found in the street, children begging, because the law also defines children who need care and protection, who can be brought to court also. So they all end up in the court for different orders.
Okay.
So this child who is in conflict with the law, amevunja sheria, they'll be brought with a charge sheet. The charge is read to them. If they plead not guilty, they're supposed to be given bond, and so that they can go back home. If they can't raise bond, they may end up in the remand home. That is now where there is wait for their case to be heard. When the case has been heard, then they may end up in a rehab school, or in a Boston institution, depending on the age, or at committee YCTC.
Justice, if I may just ask, when you say remand, is it a remand that is specific for children, or is it just a general remand that everybody is taken to?
They are remand homes for children.
Okay.
Yes, they are remand homes specific for children, and they're called children remand homes. Yes, so you are sent there if, for any reason, you cannot be released to your parent or to the next person who should take care of you. You end up in a remand home, pending the hearing and determination of the case.
Now, I'm looking at this child also has a right to access several facilities,
Yes.
education. They still haven't been convicted, or even if they have, you still want to make sure that this child is going through education. At remand school, remand home, are these services being offered? What activities do they have access to when you're in a child remand home?
Unfortunately, for the remand home, there has been this argument that they're supposed to stay there for a short period. A children's case should not take longer than 6 months. Okay? So the argument has been, not from us, as for the courts, we say you should get education even when you are in the remand home. There should be a system where when you come in and you cannot go back home for any other reason, you should be able to continue learning when you are in the remand home, because the right to education is not limited. it is not limited. The right to education is not one of the rights that is limited by any law. Whether you, for the child who is in custody, they should get their education. So if you are in second term and you end up there, they should get, but it's not there.
Okay.
So you might find they go to other activities, some kind of learning or games or watching telly or having some people come and talk to them, because it's, you sit here, wait for your case, you go to court, you come back. So that is not available. But in Boston institutions and rehab schools, education is provided for. Both vocational and school, regular school is provided for.
Something that I'm thinking about here, you go into the system, you are institutionalized because you are a minor. Okay? What happens when you then get to 18?
Oh, that is the elephant in the room, very big elephant in the room. Now, the system, the child justice system now, that's where it gets a problem that you have. We are expected by the law to deal with you according to the age when you committed the offense.
Okay.
That is what is supposed, because you committed the offense when
As
you
a
were
minor.
a minor. So you may end up being an adult, you're there. And courts, I've seen courts deciding that now you are 18, you still need to be punished to pay for what you did. And there's no institution for you, for children who committed offenses when they were minors and now they're adults. It's not there. So what happens? They end up
In the adult system.
serving a sentence in prison because they've turned 18. So there are some courts that find it difficult because there's an available non-custodial sentence, which is probation, supervision, or community service, or another form of supervision. But depending on the offense, you find some courts finding it very difficult to give a child who was found guilty when they were, who committed an offense when they were a child, they've been found guilty when they are adults, giving them a non-custodial sentence. They just find that this child must go to prison.
What's your task force doing about that?
Making recommendations that we need that proper, we need a system where young adults, young children, or children who commit serious crime can be taken care of, because they are children who actually commit serious crime. And society would like to see them properly rehabilitated, proper investigation found out why they actually did that. And then, we ensure that they have a system which is not the adult one because they committed crime when they were young, but where they can be properly rehabilitated with proper programs for them to come out back into society when they are better persons. But right now we have this problem that exists because of that gap, and it's a gap that has been seen. It's giving us quite a big headache. But that's the recommendation we've made. Yeah.
And that's all you can do, make the recommendations.
Yes, for the time
And then
being.
hopefully it goes to Parliament.
And courts and see how courts can look at that. We also have trainings to discuss these things. What kind of jurisprudence do you want to see for the child justice system? That is another thing that the task force have been trying to find out. What kind of jurisprudence do you want to see for children? How do we get people to understand? One of the things about children is that as much as they come to court as child offenders, many of us may not understand who a child really is, the developmental issues of childhood, and that is supposed to influence even how we make our decisions. Because when a child comes to court, they are still developing, they are still growing. Even when they commit crime, there's that opportunity for us to influence even the way they develop after that by the time they get into adulthood. So there is this need to understand. So getting to bring in the multi-agency approach where we get the psychologists, the child development experts, the people who know these things to show us the connection between the law and this other part of of what childhood is all about, so that when we implement the law, we are able to do it in such a way that we actually give this child justice, not just punish them, but they get justice according to their state in life, that stage they are in life.
There's something I'd like you to talk to us about.
Yes.
Because when talking about children, there is something that has happened in our society where they seem to be more children than their families who can keep them.
Yeah.
So we get into the discussion about adoption and things around it.
Yes.
Now, the court plays a very, very important role in this.
Yes.
The thing that I have been thinking about, and I'm thinking about it, this is in a space of ignorance because I don't know much about it.
Yes.
What are the considerations that the court deals with to ensure that the decisions that are made and the implementations that are thereafter carried out are actually child-centered?
With regard to adoption,
Yes.
it's, the process is long for someone to adopt a child,
Yes.
because this is a person who did not give birth to this child, and they are supposed to take up responsibility as if they gave birth to this child. Not just them, not just the individual who is coming to court, but their relatives, their family. Because when you take this child, you give the child a name, you give the child a heritage, the child is supposed to even inherit from you. So there must be that acceptance. So the process takes long so that all these stages are properly negotiated on behalf of this child. So there are other stakeholders involved. There is the adoption agency that investigates you to confirm whether you are capable or you are suitable to actually adopt a child. There is the Department of Children's Services that also comes on board to find out if you are suitable to adopt a child. And when all this information is brought, because it comes, even they have to even find out if you are a convict, because if you are a convict, you should not adopt a child. Your life at home, who are you? Can you take care of a child? How does a community, society take you? So all this comes to court to enable the court now give those orders. After the court has given the orders, that's the end of it.
And so the issue of placements, whether...
No, adoption is actually placing you with a child.
Aha. Now, therein lies
You
what...
take in the absolute rights of a parent.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, so at what point, I'm sure there are details that we can't go into.
Yes.
But there are considerations as to, A, the age of the person.
Yes.
Yes.
The law actually sets out who can adopt. Of course,
Yes.
A child must be declared free for adoption. That means if this child was found abandoned, for example, nobody has come to claim them. If a mother is giving up their child for adoption, that the mother has given consent, that is taken. Then the person who is adopting, there's that age difference. If you are above 65, you cannot adopt. You must be at least, I think, 21 years above the age of this person you are adopting. If the child is above 14 years, they must give their consent. If they are below that, somebody must be able to give their consent. And then, of course, the other considerations, like, they talk about your sexuality. There are certain sexualities you cannot adopt a child. So all those things are set out by the law. So that information is brought by the people who investigate you to the court to enable the court determine whether you are suitable to adopt. And all that is brought by the people who go to the ground and bring it. Yes.
People have been saying that the adoption laws in the country are difficult. Restrictive. The adoption process is restrictive in the country. Is that true?
I think it's just that people did not understand adoption before. When I went to the High Court and began doing adoption matters, it is just that we still, I think, don't understand it so much. But when awareness is created and the process is understood, it's not really difficult. But it has to be, restrictive to a certain extent so that we don't have people using that process for criminal activities. Let me give you an example. Like, a child gets lost, say, in Makueni.
Yeah.
They are found there. They are brought, to Nairobi. They end up in a children's home. And then they are taken for adoption, by someone. And that process is not, and maybe the parent is still looking for them at Makueni. You see, so it is important for these investigations to be carried to confirm that actually this child is, where they came from, who found them, and if they are really not having someone who can, their parents are not looking for them, or people who steal children.
Yeah.
There are people who steal children.
The people who are in the business of buying and selling children.
And then they bring them into the system. You see, that is the other. It's just like money laundering.
It's
you can launder
wash.
children. You bring a child into the system. You've stolen, and then if we don't do proper investigations, that stolen child ends up adopted by someone, or in that process. So we have to be careful, because we also don't want to open space for children to be, and we've seen it, as you said, there are people who do that. So to that extent, but there's something beautiful about some of this, that kinship adoption, where you take up your sister's children or your relative's children. It's a very easy process, and that is available. In the new law, there are more. It's more. There's a more expression or more clarity on it.
Okay.
But right now, it's still available for people who take care of their.
So say somebody, you have a sibling who does not have a child and would
Yes.
like to have a child, you can basically donate your child.
I don't think it works that way, but
Now, I've had conversations such as that. I mean,
yes, but
two brothers or maybe two sisters, and
Yes.
one of them does not have a child.
yes.
And so the other one says, my next baby, I'd like to give you the child so that you can bring up the child as your own. And
Well-
I'd like to sign off all the rights.
Well, I guess you can do that, but it doesn't sound right to say you can donate your child to another person. Imagine that child said, you were donated to your uncle. But it's a situation where you are taking care of maybe your sister is not there, or your brother is not there, or your
Okay.
relative is not there, and you want to actually acquire the parental rights. To these children, then the kinship adoption, where you can actually come to court and
I like that phrase, kinship
Yes.
adoption.
Yes.
Because traditionally, at least the background that I come from, I saw it very often.
yeah.
And somebody grew up. The thing is, you knew
Yes.
who your parents were. It's
Yes.
not that you didn't,
Yes, you did.
but you are a member of this particular home.
yes.
And in some cases, they even changed their names.
Yes. So now this when it's done legally now in the legal process, it takes it to a further to another level, because now everything depends so much on your legal status. So now you can become legally the son of Teresia. You can inherit from Teresia. The siblings will not say this is not our. Where did
not
you
our
come
sibling.
from?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So that when you do that, then that makes a difference for the child.
Judge, there's something you mentioned earlier, and this is how when the children are getting into the system.
Yes.
And there was a special category of children that you said, these ones may not have committed an offense.
Yes.
But they people
End
will
up
be
in
brought
the
to court
system.
because they're in need of care. And I see a question from Cynthia on Twitter who's asking, so how are these then taken care of by the system?
Thank you. Actually, the majority of children who come, including the ones who are in conflict with the law, are children in need of care and protection. And the Children's Act, gives a whole list of them. Now, when they come into the system, there is a process that the task force now came up with, a protection and care form. Instead of a charge sheet, there's a form that is used to process the child at the police station if they end up there. And it just looks at what are the needs. How come the child is here? What are the needs of this child? How can the court assist? So when they come to court, the court will be looking at how do we take care of the welfare of this child, in collaboration with the Department of Children's Services and any other social services that are available. If the child is lost, the court may require someone to find their home and return them home. If, for example, a child is a victim of an offense, like a child who's been defiled, they may need medical treatment. They may need counseling. They may need to be rescued from the home where this offense happened. So the court will be saying, for the welfare of this child, we take them to a different place. We make orders to exclude the person who committed, if it's the father or the mother or a brother, exclude them from this. So for every circumstance of the child, there's a way the court will deal with it. For example, a child who has been exposed to child marriage, they are rescued from the marriage.
Yes.
They are brought to court. We have, first of all, to declare that marriage
Null and void.
And then now take care of the welfare of this child. Either take them to school, order that they be taken back to school. If they need treatment, if they are pregnant, they need to be taken to a place where they can be taken care of. All the orders that will take care of the welfare of this child are done by the court at that particular time.
Who implements the orders of the court?
The court will give orders as to who to do it.
Okay.
For example, if it's reintegration to be returned home, it will be the Department of Children's Services, for example. If the child, say, is pregnant and they need to go into a home for pregnant girls, then the court asks for a report from the same Department of Children's Services, then they will identify a place where this child will be taken. and the court will make the order for the child to be taken there, and also make orders for progress reports as to how the child is faring on, just in case there is need to review the orders and either remove them from there or, make other orders on what should happen to that child. So the agencies, the court does not work alone. It's a multi-agency job, because you can't deal with the child alone. The court can't do some of these things.
Now, in reality, Judge, truthfully,
Yes.
is there enough money that's been allocated to take care of all these issues?
No.
And say that when a child is brought and then the court has ordered that, for example, take this child and take care of them, they require money
Yeah.
in those homes, in those
Yeah.
facilities. Is there money?
No, it's not enough.
Okay.
It's not enough, and because you find we have what they call the CCIs, charitable children institutions. Those are institutions run by
Children's
private individuals or churches. Rescue places where a child who needs to be there for a period of time is sent. You deal with their issues, and then they come back and go home.
Let's talk about children who end up in the system
Yes.
because their parent has been convicted into the system. We see them very many times, especially in the women's prisons. Do they have a right?
That, let me just say that the system had, those children were invisible to the system at some point. Because,
Justice, you mean the system preferred to have them?
To just turn a blind eye.
Yes.
no, you see, you can't turn a blind eye. You are sitting in court and you have this mama.
And she's holding a baby.
Who's holding a baby, and two others are with her. She could be pregnant, but she's committed an offense. So you are dealing with her, and because there is nothing, actually there was nothing anywhere to say what to do with these children. They are recognized, by the way, by the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child as children of imprisoned mothers, that we need to do something about them. But when we were dealing with these mothers, utafunga yeye tu na anaenda kotini na watoto wake. Because prison, they will accept, prison has that policy. The law says a child up to 4 years can stay with the mother. And it's, I think, just the mother. I don't know about the fathers.
Are there facilities to cater for these children in the prisons?
The prisons have had to look for ways of dealing with that, so that to create, when they get to a certain, because kids, as they grow, because at some point they have to stay with the mother in their cell.
Yep.
They are suckling, they are too young and stuff like that, so they stay. But at some point, prisons now had to find a way, as we all became more a human rights
Conscious.
approach, oriented, these things started to prick our consciousness that, look, this child that cannot continue staying with the mother in the cell, or if they stay with the mother has to be given certain privileges because of the child, and then at a certain time they have to go to school, so they have to create a situation where this kid goes to nursery outside the prison compound. But now one of the things that the task force tasks was to come up with a policy on how to deal with these children. And now this PNC form, at some point, some of us began to realize that this child is not joined to the mother. They have their separate rights. They are a child who needs care and protection. The mother is one who committed the crime. So opening this PNC file, getting a report from the children officer to tell you if there's another person or an institution that can hold this child as the mother is serving her sentence, if this child is old enough to leave the prison. So now we have this system going on where courts are consciously doing that. And not even that, when you are arrested from your home, who is left with your children?
Who's left with the children?
That is a gap that has been with us for so long. That you'll commit a crime, the police come to your home, take you away, and your children are left with nobody. Actually, the law requires the police officer to recognize that those children is living there. Immediately the parent is arrested, they become children in need of care and protection. And he has an obligation to let the system know, that is the children officer, or the chief, who is an authorized officer under the Children's Act, that there are children here who need care and protection, do something. We have gone with the mother, or we have gone with the father, or we've gone with both of them, or the caregiver. So why we are saying we need a justice system fit for children is filling in these gaps that have been looking at us, because they are there, and when those kids are left on their own, what happens? the mother goes,
Yep.
they wouldn't go to school again. They may end up in the street. If they only had one parent, just imagine what happened. Everything goes
It's a
wrong for
whole
those
issue.
kids.
Judge,
So-
we thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Come again. Okay?
Yes.
This is like the fourth time we're having you, and we
Allow
never
me
exhaust.
to say one word.
Final word.
This month is the Children Service Month for Children Matters in the judiciary
Okay.
and among all the justice actors. And what happens during the Justice Month is we try and raise awareness on children matters and also clear backlog of children cases. It is a time when all the stakeholders, probation, police, prosecution, we come together, look at the cases that are pending beyond 6 months, and try to do an RRI, quickly see whether we can deal with those. And the theme for this month is a justice system fit for children, and every actor is coming together across the country. By the way, it's across the country to actually put our heads together and consciously look at issues of children and their rights.
It's an important thing to know. And we hope that those children who are in the system get justice.
Thank you. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to also just speak about this.
Asante sana.
We appreciate
Justice
you.
Teresia Matheka is the judge of the High Court and chairperson of the Special Task Force on Children's Rights set up by the National Council for the Administration of Justice. She's been with us talking about a justice system that's fit for children.